Hi, welcome back to my garden. Here we are, another week's whirled by and time for a video. I can't actually even remember if I made a film last week, and it's not just because in my dotage I'm losing my mind and my memory, although that might be true. I don't want to put up too much of a fight against the idea that my memory isn't what it used to be. But this last week, I've been dealing with a rather nasty bout of flu. So, frankly, I can't remember anything going back that far. It's all a sort of distant, sweaty, feverish half memory. Whatever. It's time to make a film, so let's go with it. And I'm coming up this July for a new doubling down on my attempts to improve my chess. Nothing wrong with my chess. I just want to see what will happen if I actually, finally, for the first time in my life, commit to serious study. Now, if you know me well, if you followed even just these videos, you'll know that I'm not a bad chess player. I'm quite a strong player, really. Certainly in the top 0.1% on chess.com, whatever that might mean. But I'm a decent enough chess player. But I've been plagued, and dare I say I've been plagued most of my life with the thought of, well, how good could I be? And I kind of feel I never really found out. And I believe the reason is that I never really did enough hard work. Now, that's not to say I didn't spend hours and hours and hours on chess when I was a kid in high school. I reckon I probably spent the best part of a couple of hours, 5 days a week, playing games with folk at my school, or playing through games in books that I had, or just casually reading magazines and books and things like that. But the truth was, if I really think back, I never committed myself to what I now see as serious study. And actually, the more I thought about it, the more I can't escape the conclusion that I never really did that. That sort of serious hard work, consistent, committed, gritty hard work, and anything, ever. Now, I am probably slightly exaggerating. There are a couple of times in my high school sort of maths development where I did do a little bit of work. I mean, obviously did some work, but that's not what I'm talking about. And doing some work. And I think you know what I mean. So, for example, one holiday we'd started studying trigonometry, and it hadn't been going well, and I found that frustrating. So, in the 3 week mid-year break, I took out the textbook and I just literally worked through every problem there was on all the topics that we were going to cover in high school on trigonometry. Now, the fact that I could do all of that in 3 weeks probably says more about the educational system, the maths curriculum in South Africa in the 80s. It says more about that than it does about my mathematical genius. But the truth was, in those 3 weeks, I did do pretty much every problem. And I went back and my difficulties with trigonometry were over, and life went back to normal, of being able to do just the minimum amount of work to sort of cruise through high school. And there was another moment, actually, much later on, in my final year of undergraduate studies, where, my undergraduate studies had been interrupted both the mid-year and final exams by, and I've spoken about this before, although who would remember, I have mentioned this on this channel, I was saved not once but twice by health issues. Mid-years it was mumps, I think, or measles, something like that. And the end of the year it was an emergency removal of 2 wisdom teeth. And consequently I had a bunch of medical sups to write in January rather than at the end of November. And that was very fortunate because I would have failed the exams. I knew absolutely nothing. Having recovered from my ill health in the middle of the year, I'd done my fair share of drinking, not my fair share of lecture attendance, and coming up to the end of the year exams, those were always a bit of a last-minute study affair. And one of the subjects in particular was a course called Metric Spaces, which is a precursor to general topology, and it's at the sort of starting point where mathematics becomes ridiculously abstract. I'm not going to talk about metric spaces here, have no fears, but suffice to say, I had no idea what was going on in the course because I hadn't attended all the lectures, I hadn't read the notes, but luckily there were notes, and compared to most of our university lecturers, Dr. Conradi was disciplined and dedicated. His notes were lucid, quite brilliant. The exercises were graduated in their difficulty, and so I was able in those holidays to start working through each lecture, doing the exercises at the end of it. It was a bit complicated because my cousins from America had come over on a holiday, and so I wanted to enjoy the sort of fun and games of the end of year vacations as well as studying mathematics. But I did work kind of on a daily basis and managed to get through the exams and in fact do well enough to get into the honours programme, which was a sort of preparation for doing postgraduate work, masters, PhD and so on. I do remember Dr. Conradi telling me that, I'd done all right. I got an upper second. He said, so you're in the course, but the work that you've done to get here will not be enough. You need to up your game. And he said it nicely, in a gentle way. But when the general topology course started, and he lectured that as well, the truth of what he said dawned on me, but the action that was necessary, i.e. not doing 1 or 2 hours a day, but doing many hours every day and really pushing myself to the limit, well, that never happened, and nor did any further progress in my fledgling maths career. And that was maths. So no, I never really doubled down on it. And I think of even things like athletics. I made progress at certain points because I can recall before one season, a couple of seasons I went on to training camps where I did some serious training, and one mid-year break I committed to doing a sort of round the local park where St George's Park, the cricket ground is situated. It was a sort of it was a 2.2 kilometre track with 6 exercise stations, and I would do 3 laps of it, doing the exercises, sort of pre-season workout to get myself in shape for the athletic season. It did make a difference, but I never at athletics pushed myself beyond that. And this truth proved to be the case. This was true for my whole life. Not that I didn't have my little successes, but they were based on general interest and poor levels of competition. I'm probably damning myself, but there's a truth to what I say. And when I left the teaching profession and decided to move up here to the northeast of Brazil to follow art, I decided, one of the reasons was to find out if there was any truth to this nonsense about 10,000 hours. But I did find it difficult to commit to hard work, even at something that I enjoyed, like my art. And it took years to build up a sort of a steady practice. And the thing that really pushed me into that zone of committed, consistent, gritty hard work on my art was the COVID crisis. And that really is the first and only time in my life when I can truly say I've put in, I suppose, 4 or 5 hours a day, most days of the week, for a couple of years on the trot. And I look at the difference it made to my art, and it was astonishing. Partly because, I had been working on my art consistently. I had been making progress and studying, thinking, experimenting. So I wasn't starting from nowhere. Of course, I won't be starting from nowhere in my chess program. But I had never done that kind of dedicated, push yourself to some sort of limit sort of work. And it was astonishing. And I think I say this about myself, and perhaps it sounds like I'm being overly hard, but if you looked at your own life, how true is this of what you've done? Let me know in the comments below, the common YouTube trick to get some sort of interaction with the audience. But I'm intrigued. And I think very few of us ever double down on something with the level of commitment that it takes to truly find out what we can actually do. So there we are. Let me know. This has been a sort of a sideline to the discussion of the book Transcend, but obviously what I'm talking about is all about, as a sort of end point, final goal, is about transcendence. So I'm sure this is going to fit in somehow, not exactly sure on the details, but it'll work out in the end. And that's it. Probably time to call it a day on this video. So I do hope your lives are filled with joy. I trust that life is treating you well. Is for me, now that I'm recovered from this rather nasty bout of flu. And until next week from a sunny Brazil, ciao.